Hello watch enthusiasts and welcome to Watch Chronicler. Amongst the world-famous luxury watch brands Rolex, Omega, Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin and Lange and Söhne, certain models inevitably receive more attention than others. For Patek Philippe, the Nautilus is currently in the spotlight and is regularly selling for 3 times its retail price of £23,440. Likewise, the steel sports Rolex market is presently making it near impossible to acquire a piece such as Submariner, Sea Dweller or Daytona. However, many watches from these brands slip through the gaps. For this reason, I'd today like to discuss one watch from each of the aforementioned watch brands, which is often forgotten amongst more popular models, thus making it rather interesting to discuss. These underappreciated watches vary from an exquisite Patek Philippe dress watch to a Lange so clever that it's on my all-time list of favourite watches. But one point I'll make before I start the video is that these are not necessarily watches which it's still easy to acquire, but just watches which deserve to be discussed more often and which people simply aren't aware of sometimes. So I think they're worthwhile talking about in a video like this because they're quite wonderful, fascinating and rare. But please remember to like, share and subscribe to catch more content, and follow Watch Chronicler on Instagram for photography and daily posts about new releases, new articles and new videos. Most importantly, head over to watchchronicler.com to access full articles, wallpaper grade photography and features available exclusively in written format. For Speedmaster fans, take a look at my Speedmaster story, as you won't be disappointed with this interesting narrative about how I got into this rather remarkable range of watches. The first brand to look at is perhaps the most obvious, Rolex. For well over a century, Rolex has produced watches with a clarity shared by few other brands. They produce simple but extremely practical and brilliantly well-made watches, which are able to satisfy a buyer like few before or since. In recent years, their conventional sports watches have become more and more elusive, with waiting lists extending into the years as a consequence of a culture of hype in which we currently live. However, one model has escaped this following due to an unconventional design, but also a change in market position. This is the Rolex Air-King reference 116900. When the Air-King was discontinued in 2014, it had held the position of entry-level Rolex for a number of years. It was a simple, time-only watch which acted as the equivalent of today's Oyster Perpetual. However, when Rolex relaunched the name in 2016 with the reference 116900, all was changed. It was now a 40mm watch which, at a glance, you would be excused for mistaking for an Explorer. The lug tops were brushed, the bezel was wide, and the black dial luminous, although admittedly only just. It had shed its old feathers as the affordable offering, and now provided impressive specifications including equivalent anti-magnetism to the Milgauss, courtesy of a soft dyne core, nickel phosphorus lever and escape wheel, and parachrom balance spring. As I'm sure you can imagine, this watch was a storming success, except of course that it wasn't. With a busy dial complete with non-luminous Arabic numerals and Technicolor printing on the dial in green and yellow, it was widely swept aside for the release of the new Rolex Explorer. However, whilst I do see that this watch didn't have the broad appeal of the Explorer, I feel that relegation to the list of undesirable Rolexes was uncalled for. For a start, collectors are normally begging for the use of colours such as green on Rolex dials, and whilst only luminous at 12 o'clock, the applied white gold numerals are stunning to see. Admittedly, this watch is rather thick at 13mm, but considering that it offers the same 3131 automatic movement and anti-magnetism as the Milgauss, but with a more subtle look and a price £1,550 short of its £6,300, it deserves much more attention than it receives. The second luxury brand in this list is Omega, a brand with a set of truly legendary names within its fold, from the ever-popular Seamaster to the simply iconic Speedmaster. Even the Constellation receives praise for its quirky 1980s design. However, the watch which I most admire in their current range is one which many have not even heard of, yet may be the most important in recent years, the Globemaster. The origins of the Globemaster were a form of reboot of the Constellation range as traditionally the most high-end model offered by Omega. It was released in 2015 to much fanfare, yet never commanded the sales of its most obvious competitor, the Rolex Datejust. The case of the Globemaster was a step above the Seamaster Aquaterra, with subtle brushing and sharp, serious lines punctuated by polished bevels. Surrounding the dial was placed a fluted bezel, which aligns with the design used by Omega since the mid-20th century. To continue this understated and intensely Swiss look, the dial echoes the pie-pan faceted dials of the 1950s and 60s, yet gives them modern refinement with luminous baton markers to match the straight hands. Perhaps from this description this watch seems a tad dull, however the details and technology make this watch a true wonder. Firstly, the case has been seriously engineered. The caseback features a beautiful metal constellation medallion in the middle of an exhibition caseback, whilst the fluted bezel is made from tungsten to prevent wear over time. The water resistance is 100 metres, which is quite a lot for a dress watch, and most importantly this was the first Omega to use their now iconic master coaxial chronometer movement, which is often regarded as the most accurate mechanical movement currently on the market. In this case it uses the caliber 8900, which gives a coaxial escapement, anti-magnetism to a scarcely believable 15,000 Gauss, and the ability to jump the hour hand back and forth in hour increments so as to change time zones quickly and easily. Perhaps due to the introduction of this movement to lower-end models, this watch never enjoyed much success, yet can be viewed as a pioneer for Omega, which fostered a movement now responsible for a resurgence of this historic brand. Vacheron Constantin is often regarded as one of the finest watchmakers in the world, and as a pillar of the world of high horology. Recently, all eyes have been on the overseas, as Vacheron's potentially higher quality alternative to the Underappreciated Royal Oak, yet another watch was released just a few months later in 2016, the steel version of the Quai de Lille. This watch, offered in other metals since 2008, forms one of the most imaginative, well-designed and forward-looking watches currently offered by Vacheron Constantin, yet few have heard of it. Priced at £14,200, you would expect it to be a far inferior watch to the £18,100 overseas, yet I don't believe that it is. Whilst the overseas, handsome though it is, plays to the steel sports watch on bracelet category, which remains immensely popular due to the offerings of AP and Patek, this watch plays to the design cues of Vacheron Constantin themselves. Its case is complex, even ornate, in a sort of futuristic Art Deco style. The shape is composed of brushed elements concealed within polished ones, and the lugs remain short whilst being able to accommodate a conventional strap. The dial is even more attractive as it's composed of multiple beautifully finished layers. On the outer ring the hours are presented with beautifully applied Arabic numerals, whilst the centre of the dial just has the brand name and applied logo. Most striking alongside the luminous hands is the date disc, which uses a pointer which itself orbits the dial once a month. All of this is controlled by the caliber 5100/1, the same 60-hour power reserve 4Hz 37 joule automatic movement which is found in the overseas, and which is protected from up to 100 metres of water in this particular case. The only difference is a tungsten rotor instead of gold, thus making this watch a remarkably underappreciated piece from Vacheron. Patek Philippe is far from an underappreciated brand. Steel models are at an all-time high for demand, and pieces such as the Nautilus regularly sell for 3 times their retail price due to a tight control on numbers. Meanwhile though, there is one piece which strikes me as the most in tune with Patek Philippe's history, the 5196. A member of the iconic Calatrava range, the 5196 is a stunning reinterpretation of the first serially produced Patek, the 1932 reference 96. Available only in precious metals with subtly leaf-shaped lugs and brushed sides, this is possibly the most elegant watch currently on sale. The bezel is flat, the lugs are exquisitely polished, and no text is to be seen anywhere on the case. Even the caseback, as though adhering to traditional modesty, does not reveal its beautiful movement, but instead shields it with metal. With a 37mm diameter, the watch has grown significantly since the 31mm of the reference 96, yet it has also grown slimmer from 9mm down to 7.68. For the golden versions, the dial is an exercise in restraint, with a subtle off-white brushed base adorned with sharply cut baton markers with shaven tips. To add to this image of elegance, the minute markers are metallic drops whilst the hands are classic Patek in Dauphine form. The platinum version is more ornate, with a dial comprising brushed, polished and sunken surfaces all topped off with breguet Arabic numerals and exquisite leaf hands. The result is straight from the 1930s and utterly exquisite, with a diamond embedded at 6 o'clock on the case. Mechanically, this watch uses the caliber 215 PS, which offers a 4Hz beat rate, 44-hour power reserve, Gyromax balance and Spiromax balance spring, and a thickness of only 2.55mm. It really is a stunning old-fashioned manually wound caliber to top off what is simply a stunning watch costing, realistically, between a quarter and a half what you would pay for a Nautilus. The final watch in this video is not so much underappreciated, but rather little known of. Where our Lange and Söhne is known for its iconic Lange 1, or its datograph with one of the finest chronographs ever made, the Lange 31 is far less well known or recognised. Despite this, it's perhaps the most interesting watch to come from this Saxon house in recent years. Initially released in 2007, this watch only shows the time, the date and the power reserve, yet requires a beautifully finished 45.9 by 15.9mm case in order to house the movement. The reason for this is first noticed on the power reserve indicator with the number 31. And no, those aren't hours, but days, thus creating a watch with a 744-hour power reserve. Of course, finishing is superb on the dial, with stunning lance hands, and on the most recent white gold version, a grey levelled dial. By contrast to the sobriety of the dial, the movement truly is something else. In order to cater to the need for a 744-hour power reserve, a single enormous spring barrel occupies most of the space within the case, and is filled with 2 springs amounting to a total of 3.7 metres. And that's 3.7 metres to the normal 30 centimetres of a watch spring. In order to wind this monstrous spring is needed a special key inserted through a slot in the case back. This not only winds the spring, but is ratcheted to make winding easier and protects the spring from excess torque. The final aspect is keeping a linear torque curve, something offered by a remontoir d'égalité, or constant force mechanism which delivers an equal force to the balance every 10 seconds. This watch is a masterpiece in doing something unexpected, and for that reason I wish that it were far more well known. I'll conclude the video there, but please do tell me what you thought of these picks in the comments down below, and remember to like, share and subscribe to catch more on Watch Chronicler. This is Armand from WatchChronicler.com, out.